What if one decision could shake the very foundations of an entire aristocratic family? In a world where reputation is everything and tradition rules every choice, a single woman dares to do the unthinkable. She chooses freedom over marriage. At Downton Abbey, where every whisper travels through grand halls and every scandal spreads like wildfire, divorce is not just a personal matter. It is a storm that threatens the honor of the entire family. But this time, the rules of the past are about to face the courage of a woman who refuses to live a life that no longer belongs to her. And as the story reaches its final chapter, Downton Abbey must confront a truth it has long tried to avoid. The world is changing, and some traditions cannot survive forever. For years, life at Downton Abbey has moved according to strict rules. Every morning begins with quiet order. Servants move carefully through the halls, preparing the house before the family wakes. The grand dining room waits for breakfast, polished silver shining under the soft light. Upstairs, the members of the Crawley family carry themselves with dignity, knowing that every action reflects their name and their legacy. In this world, reputation is everything. One wrong choice can become the talk of the entire county. A single rumor can travel from drawing rooms to dinner tables, spreading through high society faster than anyone can stop it. For families like the Crawleys, honor is not just personal, it belongs to generations past and generations yet to come. That is why marriage holds such power here. A marriage is not simply about love. It is about stability, respect, and social order. When a woman marries into a respected family, she becomes part of a carefully built system that values loyalty and appearances above all else. Once the vows are spoken, the expectation is clear. The marriage must last, no matter the cost. But behind the beautiful walls of Downton, life is not always as perfect as it seems. Even the most elegant rooms cannot hide the quiet struggles people carry inside. Smiles at dinner tables may hide painful truths. Polite conversations may cover deep disappointment. And sometimes the life that looks perfect from the outside is the very life that feels impossible to live. Divorce, in this society, is more than a private decision. It is a scandal. It challenges the very values that families like the Crawleys have spent decades protecting. A divorced woman risks being judged, whispered about, even pushed away from the circles she once belonged to. People believe that if a marriage ends, someone must be blamed, and often, that blame falls on the woman. So when the idea of divorce begins to appear within the world of Downton Abbey, it sends a quiet wave of tension through the household. At first, it is only a possibility, something people hope will disappear if they ignore it long enough. But deep down, everyone knows the truth. At first, the rumors move quietly through the halls of Downton Abbey. A few soft whispers between servants. A careful look exchanged across the dinner table. No one says the word out loud, but everyone feels that something is wrong. A marriage that once seemed proper and respectable is slowly falling apart. At the center of this growing tension stands a woman who once believed her life was already decided for her. When she first entered marriage, she followed the rules that society had written long before she was born. She played the role expected of her, graceful, polite, and loyal. In the eyes of the world, she had done everything right. Yet behind closed doors, the truth was far more painful. Her marriage had become a quiet prison. The happiness she once hoped for never truly arrived. Days passed with polite conversations and distant smiles, but the warmth of love slowly disappeared. Instead of feeling like a partner, she began to feel like a stranger in her own life. In a society like this, many women would simply accept their fate. They would stay silent, protect the family name, and continue living a life that no longer brought them peace. That was what the world expected. That was what tradition demanded. But this woman begins to ask a question that few people at Downton dare to consider. What if staying in the marriage is the real mistake? The thought alone is dangerous. Divorce is not just rare, it is scandalous. For a woman of high society, it can destroy her reputation and change the way people look at her forever. Friends may grow distant. Invitations may quietly disappear. The life she once knew could vanish in a single decision. Yet something inside her has begun to change. The quiet acceptance she once carried is slowly turning into courage. She begins to realize that a life built only on appearances is not truly a life at all. Members of the Crawley family start to notice this change as well. Lady Mary Crawley watches carefully, understanding more than most how difficult it can be to balance personal happiness with family expectations. Meanwhile, the idea of divorce itself makes many people uneasy. especially those who believe tradition must always come first. But the truth can no longer stay hidden. The woman at the center of the storm has reached a turning point. For the first time in her life, she is not thinking about society, reputation, or the endless whispers of others. The moment the truth begins to spread, the peaceful rhythm of Downton Abbey changes almost overnight. What was once only a quiet suspicion suddenly becomes the topic everyone is talking about. The word that no one dared to say before is now whispered in drawing rooms and repeated in letters across the county. Divorce. In a society built on reputation and tradition, the idea feels almost shocking. For generations, families like the Crawleys have protected their image carefully, making sure that every public appearance, every marriage, and every decision reflects honor and stability. A broken marriage threatens that perfect image. Inside the house, the tension is impossible to ignore. At dinner, conversations grow shorter. People choose their words carefully, aware that one wrong sentence could reveal too much. Even the servants begin to notice the change in the air. They move quietly through the corridors, sharing curious looks, but speaking only when they are certain no one important is nearby. Among the family, opinions quickly begin to divide. Some believe the marriage should be saved at any cost. To them, reputation is more important than personal happiness. Ending a marriage could bring unwanted attention, and attention is the last thing a noble family wants. Others see the situation differently. Lady Edith Crawley, who has faced her own share of judgment in society, understands how painful it can be to live under constant expectations. She quietly sympathizes with the woman at the center of the storm. She knows that sometimes the hardest decision is also the bravest one. Meanwhile, Robert Crawley struggles with the situation in his own way. As the head of the family, he feels responsible for protecting the Crawley name. For him, the thought of scandal brings deep concern. Downton Abbey is more than just a home, it is a legacy built over generations, but even he can see the truth. That is slowly becoming clear. The world outside Downton is changing. Old traditions that once seemed unbreakable are beginning to bend under the weight of a new era. Women are starting to ask for lives filled with more than duty and silence. They want respect, choice, and the chance to shape their own futures. And now, that change has arrived at Downton's very doorstep. The woman who once stayed silent is no longer willing to live a life that feels empty. The whispers, the judgment, the fear of scandal, none of it feels as powerful as the quiet voice inside her that keeps repeating the same truth. She deserves more than this, and soon, she will have to decide whether she is brave enough to claim it. By the time the tension reaches its peak, the atmosphere inside Downton Abbey feels heavier than ever. The quiet halls that once carried only polite conversation now hold something deeper in certainty. Everyone senses that an important decision is coming, and when it arrives, it will change more than just one life. For the woman at the center of the storm, the moment of truth can no longer be delayed. For too long, she has lived according to rules written by others. She followed every expectation, carried every responsibility, and protected every appearance. Yet none of those sacrifices ever brought her the happiness she once imagined. Now she stands at a crossroads. One path offers safety. If she stays in the marriage, the whispers may slowly fade. Society will remain comfortable, and the family's reputation will stay untouched. Life at Downton will return to its familiar rhythm, and people will pretend that nothing ever went wrong. But the other path offers something far more powerful: freedom. Choosing divorce means stepping into a future filled with uncertainty. Society may judge her, friends may distance themselves, invitations to grand gatherings may stop arriving. In the eyes of many, a divorced woman will always carry a shadow of scandal. Yet for the first time, she realizes something important. A life lived only to satisfy others is not truly a life at all. As the family gathers, the tension becomes impossible to ignore. Some members watch quietly, unsure of what to say. Others struggle with the weight of tradition pressing heavily on their thoughts. Even Lady Mary Crawley, known for her strength and sharp mind, understands how difficult this decision must be. Because this moment is about more than just one marriage. It represents a new chapter in the story of Downton itself. The world outside the estate is moving forward. Old rules that once controlled every part of society are slowly losing their power. Women are beginning to demand lives built on respect and choice instead of silent duty. And now, standing in the heart of one of England's most traditional homes, a woman finally speaks the truth that many before her were too afraid to say. She will not stay in a marriage that has already ended in spirit. Her decision sends a quiet shock through the room. For a moment, no one speaks. The weight of tradition, reputation, and expectation hangs in the air. But something unexpected begins to happen. Instead of anger, some members of the family start to see her courage. Because sometimes the strongest act is not protecting the past. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is choose a different future. After the decision is spoken aloud, a deep silence settles over Downton Abbey. It is the kind of silence that only appears when something truly important has happened. The words cannot be taken back now. The choice has been made, and the future will move forward from this moment. At first, the reaction is exactly what everyone expected. Whispers begin to travel beyond the walls of Downton. Letters carry the news from one estate to another. In elegant drawing rooms across the county, people lower their voices as they discuss the shocking story. A divorced woman connected to the Crawley family becomes the latest subject of society's endless gossip. For many people in high society, the situation seems simple. They believe tradition has been broken, and therefore someone must be blamed. In their eyes, marriage should survive, no matter how difficult it becomes. Walking away from it feels like a challenge to the very system they have trusted for generations. But inside Downton, something more complicated begins to unfold. Instead of anger lasting forever, the family slowly begins to look beyond the scandal. They start to see the strength it took to make such a difficult choice. Ending a marriage in a world that refuses to understand it requires more courage than anyone first realized. Even Lady Edith Crawley, who knows what it feels like to face judgment from society, quietly admires the bravery behind the decision. She understands that living under constant expectations can slowly steal a person's happiness. Watching someone break free from that pressure feels both shocking and inspiring at the same time. Meanwhile, Robert Crawley begins to reflect on the deeper meaning of what has happened. For years, he believed the strength of the Crawley family came from protecting tradition at all costs. But now he sees that real strength may come from something else entirely: the ability to adapt when the world begins to change. The woman who once feared the judgment of society now carries herself differently. There is still uncertainty in her future, but there is also a quiet confidence that did not exist before. She no longer feels trapped by expectations that never truly belonged to her. And slowly, the mood at Downton begins to shift. What first appeared to be a scandal starts to look more like a symbol of change. The estate that once represented strict tradition is now witnessing the beginning of a new way of thinking. Because sometimes, the person brave enough to break the rules becomes the very person who helps others see that the rules were never meant to last forever. In the weeks that follow, life at Downton Abbey slowly begins to settle again. The great house still stands proudly against the countryside, its tall windows catching the morning light just as they always have. Servants continue their daily routines, and the Crawley family gathers once more for dinner beneath the warm glow of chandeliers. Yet something inside the house has quietly changed. The decision that once felt like a shocking scandal no longer carries the same weight. The whispers from society still exist, but they begin to lose their power over time. What once seemed unthinkable has slowly become a reminder that even the strongest traditions cannot stop the world from moving forward. For the woman who chose divorce, life is no longer defined by fear or silent compromise. The path ahead may not be easy, but it is finally her own. Instead of living according to the expectations of others, she now steps into a future shaped by her own choices. Around her, the family begins to understand that this moment represents something larger than a broken marriage. It represents a turning point for the entire world they live in. The old rules that once controlled every part of society are slowly fading, making space for new ideas about independence and personal happiness. Even Lady Mary Crawley, known for her sharp mind and strong sense of responsibility, recognizes the deeper meaning of what has happened. She sees that the strength of a family is not measured only by how well it protects tradition, but also by how well it faces change. And change is exactly what the future demands. Downton Abbey itself has survived many challenges over the years: wars, economic struggles, and shifting social rules. Each time, the estate has adapted in order to survive. Now it faces another transformation, one that is quieter but just as important. The story of a divorced woman has become a symbol of that transformation. What began as a scandal has grown into something far more powerful, a reminder that courage can reshape even the most traditional worlds. The grand halls of Downton may still hold the echoes of the past, but they are now opening their doors to a future where people are allowed to choose their own paths. And as the sun sets over the estate one more time, it becomes clear that Downton Abbey's greatest strength has never been its traditions alone. Its true strength has always been the people brave enough to change with the times. As the story of Downton Abbey moves toward its grand finale, the halls of Downton Abbey feel different than they once did. The estate still carries its elegance, its traditions, and the memories of generations who lived within its walls. But something deeper has changed, something that cannot be seen in the grand rooms or the polished silver. It can only be felt in the people who live there. The story of a divorced woman, once whispered about as a scandal, has quietly become a symbol of courage. What once shocked society has slowly begun to reshape how people think about life, happiness, and freedom. The decision that once seemed dangerous now stands as proof that even the strictest traditions can evolve. For the Crawley family, this moment becomes a lesson that reaches far beyond one marriage. Families are not defined only by their history, their titles, or their reputation. They are defined by the strength of the people within them, their ability to support one another even when the world around them struggles to understand. In many ways, the woman who chose divorce did more than change her own life. She helped change the future of Downton itself. Her courage opened a door that had been closed for generations. It reminded everyone that happiness should not be sacrificed simply to maintain appearances. And it proved that sometimes the most powerful decisions are the ones made quietly, by someone who simply refuses to keep living a life that no longer feels true. Even Lady Mary Crawley and Lady Edith Crawley can see the deeper meaning of what has happened. They understand that the world they inherited is not the same world that lies ahead. The future will belong to those who are brave enough to shape it. And that is perhaps the most powerful message of Downton Abbey's final chapter. Because behind the beauty of the estate and the elegance of high society, the real story has always been about people learning to grow beyond the limits placed upon them. So, as the sun sets over the great house one last time, the legacy of Downton Abbey is not just about tradition or history. It is about courage. It is about change. And above all, it is about the simple but powerful truth that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is choose their own life.